Between Friends, Chapter 1. The Perfect Life. I had everything a man could want. At 42, I was at the peak of my career as the chief architect at Colton Design Group, one of Chicago's most prestigious firms. Our penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan had been featured in Architectural Digest last year. My investment portfolio was robust enough that I could retire tomorrow if I wanted, and, most importantly, I had Rebecca, my wife of 15 years, the woman who still took my breath away every time she walked into a room. Rebecca was everything I'd ever dreamed of. Brilliant, with a successful career as a gallery curator, stunningly beautiful with her auburn hair and emerald eyes, and possessed of a warmth that drew people to her like moths to flame. When we met at a charity gala in our 20s, I knew within minutes that I would marry her. Our life together was enviable. We traveled extensively, maintained a wide circle of interesting friends, and had built what I thought was an unshakable partnership. We'd decided early on not to have children, preferring to focus on our careers and each other. It had always felt like enough, more than enough. The cracks appeared so gradually that I missed them entirely. It started with Vanessa. She breezed into our lives 3 years ago when the gallery Rebecca managed hosted her photography exhibition. Vanessa Winters, a rising star in the art world whose provocative photographs of urban decay juxtaposed with the female form, had critics raving. I remember the opening night clearly. Rebecca wore her favorite black Valentino dress, the one with the plunging back that showcased the constellation of freckles across her shoulder blades. She was radiant as she introduced me to Vanessa, who stood in dramatic contrast to my wife, tall and willowy where Rebecca was petite, with platinum blonde hair cut in a severe bob that accentuated her high cheekbones and ice blue eyes. Daniel. Finally, this is Vanessa Winters. Vanessa, my husband Daniel Collins. Vanessa's handshake was firm, her smile measured but warm. She wore a crimson silk jumpsuit that seemed to flow like liquid around her frame, with a gold chain belt that emphasized her narrow waist. "Rebecca hasn't stopped singing your praises," Vanessa said, her voice carrying a slight throaty quality. "I feel like I already know you." "Likewise," I replied, though Rebecca had mentioned the photographer only in passing. "Your work is extraordinary. The contrast between vulnerability and resilience, it's compelling." Something flickered in Vanessa's eyes then. Interest, perhaps, or surprise at finding an architect who could speak the language of visual art. Whatever it was, it established an easy rapport between us. After that night, Vanessa became a fixture in our lives. She and Rebecca formed an immediate bond that quickly evolved from professional to personal. Weekend brunches, evening cocktails, shopping excursions. Suddenly, Vanessa was always there. I didn't mind. She was intelligent, witty, and brought an energy into our world that was invigorating. Maybe I should have noticed how Rebecca's eyes would linger on Vanessa when she spoke, or how their hands would brush against each other in seemingly innocent gestures. Maybe I should have questioned why my wife suddenly had so many late nights at the gallery when Vanessa was in town. But I didn't. I was secure in my marriage, blind to the shifting dynamics happening right before my eyes. The night everything changed, Rebecca and I were hosting a dinner party at our penthouse. It was a small gathering, just 8 of us, including Vanessa. Rebecca had spent the day preparing, setting the table with our finest china and crystal, arranging elaborate floral centerpieces, and selecting the perfect wines to complement each course. She chose to wear a midnight blue Dior gown that night, a recent purchase from their Paris trip, a trip I had been too busy to join. The dress had a classic silhouette but was made modern by its asymmetrical neckline and a tasteful slit that revealed glimpses of her leg when she moved. Her hair was swept up, showcasing the diamond drop earrings I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. When Vanessa arrived, fashionably late as always, she wore an ivory silk slip dress that clung to her athletic frame, paired with a structured blazer in a complementary cream tone. The simplicity of the outfit only emphasized her natural elegance. She air-kissed Rebecca on both cheeks, lingering perhaps a moment too long, and handed her a bouquet of exotic orchids. "These reminded me of you," she said. "Beautiful, complex, and impossible to look away from." Rebecca's cheeks flushed pink. I attributed it to the champagne we'd been sipping while waiting for our final guest. The evening progressed pleasantly. Good food, flowing conversation, the satisfaction of watching a carefully orchestrated event unfold perfectly. After dessert, we moved to the living area where I poured digestives, and our friends broke into smaller conversation groups. I was deep in discussion with a colleague about a new sustainable building project when I realized I hadn't seen Rebecca for some time. Excusing myself, I went looking for her. She wasn't in the kitchen or our bedroom. The guest bathroom was empty. Finally, I tried my home office, thinking she might have stepped away to answer an urgent email. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed. It opened quietly and froze at the threshold. Rebecca was perched on the edge of my desk, her expensive gown hiked up around her thighs. Between her legs stood Vanessa, one hand gripping Rebecca's waist, the other tangled in her now loosened hair. They were kissing with an intensity that spoke of familiarity, of desire long indulged rather than newly discovered. I must have made some sound, a sharp intake of breath perhaps, or the beginning of my wife's name, because they broke apart, suddenly, turning toward the door with matching expressions of shock. "Daniel!" Rebecca's voice was breathless, her lipstick smudged beyond repair. She quickly pushed her dress down, though that small gesture of modesty seemed absurd given what I'd just witnessed. Vanessa took a step back but didn't leave Rebecca's side. She didn't look ashamed. If anything, there was a challenge in her gaze, a defiance that made my blood run cold. "How long?" I managed to ask, my voice unnaturally calm. Inside, I felt like I was standing in the middle of an earthquake. Everything I thought was solid crumbling around me. Rebecca and Vanessa exchanged a look that confirmed what I already suspected. This wasn't the first time. "Daniel, I can explain," Rebecca began, sliding off the desk and taking a tentative step toward me. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think," I cut her off. "Answer the question, Rebecca. How long?" She looked down at her hands, where her wedding ring caught the light. 8 months, she whispered. 8 months. While I was designing buildings and planning our future, my wife had been building a separate life with someone else. Everything I thought I knew about us suddenly seemed like an elaborate fiction. "I think you should both leave," I said quietly. "Now." "It's my house, too," Rebecca protested weakly. "Not tonight, it isn't." Vanessa placed a protective hand on Rebecca's shoulder. "Come on, Beck. We'll go to my place." She turned to me with what almost looked like sympathy. "Daniel, Don't," I warned. "Don't you dare say you're sorry." They gathered their things quickly and left without further argument. Our other guests, sensing the sudden tension, made polite excuses and departed as well, leaving me alone in a home that no longer felt like mine, surrounded by half-empty glasses and the lingering scent of Rebecca's perfume. I poured myself a generous scotch and walked out onto the terrace. The Chicago skyline glittered before me, unchanged despite the fact that my world had just imploded. I had no idea what would happen next, but I knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 2. The Unraveling. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of sleeplessness and scotch. Rebecca called and texted repeatedly, her messages growing increasingly desperate. I ignored them all. I needed time to process what had happened, to decide what to do next. On the third day, I finally agreed to meet her at a neutral location, a small coffee shop downtown where we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. I arrived early and chose a table in the back corner, ordering black coffee I had no intention of drinking. When Rebecca walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the polished gallery director, replaced by someone who looked smaller somehow. diminished. She wore simple black trousers and a gray cashmere sweater, her version of comfort clothes, and her face was bare of makeup, accentuating the shadows under her eyes. She slid into the seat across from me. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, softly. "I think you owe me an explanation," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Rebecca twisted her wedding ring nervously. "I don't know where to start." "The beginning would be good. When did you and Vanessa first—" I couldn't finish the sentence. She took a deep breath. "It was during the gallery retreat in Santa Fe last spring. We'd all had too much wine at dinner, and when everyone else went to bed, we stayed up talking. She told me she'd been attracted to me since we met, and I realized I felt the same way." She looked up at me, tears brimming in her eyes. "I never expected it to happen, Daniel. I've never been with a woman before Vanessa. It took me completely by surprise. So what? It was just curiosity? Experimentation?" I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. She shook her head. "No, it's more than that. With Vanessa, I feel—" She paused, searching for words. "I feel seen in a way I haven't in a long time. She understands parts of me that I didn't even know were there." Each word felt like a dagger. "And I don't, after 15 years together?" "It's different," she said helplessly. "We've been so busy with our careers, our separate worlds. When was the last time we really talked, Daniel? Not about work or social obligations or household logistics, but really talked about our dreams, our fears, the things that keep us up at night?" She had a point, though I was reluctant to admit it. Our marriage had become comfortable, routine. We operated like well-oiled machinery, efficient but perhaps lacking the spark that had once defined us. "That doesn't excuse betrayal," I said, firmly. "If you were unhappy, you should have said something." "I know, I should have." Rebecca wiped away a tear. "I told myself it would just be a brief thing, that I could end it and you would never have to know. But then it kept going, and I kept finding reasons not to stop." "Do you love her?" The question I dreaded most but needed to ask. Rebecca hesitated, which was answer enough. "I care about her deeply. But I love you, Daniel. I've loved you for most of my adult life. Just not enough to be faithful," I said flatly. She flinched. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. Yet, here we are." I leaned back in my chair, suddenly exhausted. "What do you want now, Rebecca? Why are we having this conversation?" She looked directly into my eyes for the first time since sitting down. "I want to try to fix this, to fix us. I know I've broken your trust, but I'm asking for a chance to rebuild it. We could see a marriage counselor, take some time to reconnect." "And what about Vanessa?" I interrupted. "I've told her I can't see her anymore," Rebecca said quietly. "Not if there's any hope for our marriage." Part of me wanted to believe her, to grab onto this lifeline and try to salvage what we had built together. But another part, the part that kept replaying the image of her in Vanessa's arms, knew it wouldn't be that simple. "I need time," I finally said. "I can't make any decisions right now." Relief washed over her face. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't an immediate rejection either. "Of course, whatever you need." We agreed that she would continue staying at Vanessa's apartment for the time being, an irony that wasn't lost on me. She would collect some more of her belongings when I was at work. As we stood to leave, Rebecca reached for my hand. "I do love you, Daniel." I let her touch me but didn't return the gesture. "Right now, that's not enough." The following weeks were a study in emotional endurance. I threw myself into work, taking on additional projects that kept me at the office until late at night. I started running again, pounding the lakefront trail until my legs burned and my lungs ached, trying to outpace the pain that followed me everywhere. Friends called, concerned about rumors they'd heard. I gave vague explanations about Rebecca being away for work, not ready to make our separation public. At night, I would lie awake in our bed, staring at her empty side, wondering how we had arrived at this point. One morning, about 3 weeks after the dinner party, my assistant placed a large envelope on my desk. "This was just delivered for you. The courier said it was urgent." Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. "Daniel, I thought you should know the whole truth. I'm sorry. Jason T." Jason was a friend who worked in security systems. We'd occasionally collaborate on high-end residential projects. With growing unease, I plugged the drive into my computer. It contained a series of photographs clearly taken with a telephoto lens. Rebecca and Vanessa entering various hotels, the two of them at intimate dinners holding hands across tables. And, most damning, images of them on the terrace of our Hamptons Beach House, a property we rarely used outside of summer, but which Rebecca had visited several times over the winter for writing retreats. In one particularly painful image, they lounged on the daybed I had custom designed as an anniversary gift for Rebecca. Vanessa wore one of Rebecca's silk robes, the distinctive emerald color that matched my wife's eyes. Rebecca was in a champagne-colored negligee I had never seen before, presumably purchased for Vanessa's benefit rather than mine. The timestamps on the photos stretched back nearly a year, significantly longer than the 8 months Rebecca had admitted to. Another lie in what was apparently a relationship built on them. A text message from Jason followed. "Ran into them at the peninsula last night. Thought you should know what's really going on. Call if you need anything." I sat back in my chair, a strange calm settling over me. The last shred of hope I'd been harboring, that perhaps we could somehow find our way back from this, disappeared. Rebecca wasn't staying at Vanessa's temporarily while we worked things out. She was continuing their affair, probably laughing at how easily I had believed her contrition. That evening, I called my lawyer and initiated divorce proceedings. Chapter 3. The Plan. The divorce was surprisingly civil on the surface. Rebecca didn't contest my filing on grounds of adultery, likely knowing I had evidence that would make any defense futile. We agreed to sell the penthouse and split the proceeds, divide our other assets equitably, and go our separate ways with minimal drama. Beneath this civilized exterior, however, I was seething. Every new revelation, like discovering they had taken a secret vacation to Bali using my airline miles, or finding credit card charges for lingerie from La Perla that I had never seen, stoked my anger. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the calculated deception, the knowledge that while I had been planning our future, Rebecca had been systematically building a life with someone else. I maintained my composure during our necessary interactions, letting my lawyer handle most communications. Rebecca seemed relieved by my apparent acceptance of the situation, interpreting my calm as resignation rather than the slow-burning determination. It actually was. 2 months into the divorce proceedings, I was having drinks with Jason when he mentioned something that caught my attention. "You know, Vanessa's exhibition opens next week at the Haddon Gallery. Rebecca's been working overtime to make it perfect." He studied my reaction. "Sorry, man. Probably shouldn't have brought it up." "No, it's fine," I assured him, an idea beginning to form in my mind. "Tell me more about this exhibition." Jason shifted uncomfortably. "It's supposed to be Vanessa's big moment, her first solo show at a major gallery. Very exclusive opening. Night, critics flying in from all over. Rebecca's been calling in every favor she has in the art world to make it a success." I nodded thoughtfully. The Haddon Gallery was one of Chicago's most prestigious contemporary art spaces, and landing a solo exhibition there was indeed a career-defining opportunity. Rebecca must have pulled significant strings to make it happen, perhaps even compromising her professional ethics in the process. "When exactly is the opening?" I asked casually. "Next Friday, black tie affair, by invitation only." I smiled for what felt like the first time in months. "How would you feel about being my +1? Jason looked alarmed. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" seeing them together in public? Absolutely, I said with newfound certainty. In fact, I need to make some calls. I think it's time I took a more active interest in the art world. Over the next week, I set my plan in motion. First, I contacted Elise Haddon, the gallery owner, whom I had met several times at functions with Rebecca. I expressed interest in potentially commissioning some art for an upcoming building project and inquired about attending the opening. Elise, always eager to connect with potential buyers, especially ones with corporate budgets, happily added me to the guest list. Next, I reached out to Caroline West, the influential art critic for the Chicago Tribune and an old friend from college. We met for lunch, ostensibly to catch up, though I had a specific agenda. "I hear you're covering Vanessa Winter's exhibition," I said as we settled into our meals. Caroline nodded. "It's the highlight of the season. Her work has evolved significantly since her last show. There's already buzz about a potential Guggenheim Fellowship." "What if I told you there's more to the story than just artistic evolution?" Caroline raised an eyebrow, her journalist's instincts clearly piqued. "I'm listening." Carefully, I laid out selected details about Rebecca and Vanessa's relationship, positioning it not as a personal grievance but as a matter of professional ethics. A gallery curator using her position to advance her lover's career, potentially at the expense of other deserving artists. "That's problematic," Caroline admitted, already mentally composing her article. "The art world runs on integrity and transparency. Conflicts of interest like this undermine the whole system." "Exactly my concern," I agreed solemnly. "I thought someone with your journalistic standards would want to know." By the time we finished lunch, Caroline was convinced she had the makings of an exposé that went beyond a simple exhibition review. I knew she would investigate further, verifying my claims with her own sources. Caroline had built her reputation on thorough reporting. She wouldn't publish anything she couldn't substantiate. The final piece of my plan involved a young photographer named Maya Chen, whose work I had admired at a small gallery in Wicker Park. Maya's photography explored themes of betrayal and redemption through striking urban landscapes, work that was, in my professional opinion, actually more innovative than Vanessa's increasingly commercial offerings. I arranged to meet Maya at her studio, where I was genuinely impressed by her newest series. After discussing her work, I casually mentioned that I knew several serious collectors who might be interested in emerging artists with fresh perspectives. "The challenge is getting the right exposure," I explained. "Breaking into the established galleries can be difficult, especially when personal relationships often dictate which artists get showcased." Maya nodded knowingly. "It's all about who, not necessarily the quality of your work." "Exactly. Which is why I believe in creating opportunities outside the traditional system." By the end of our conversation, Maya had agreed to let me arrange a small showing of her work, coincidentally scheduled for the same evening as Vanessa's opening, in a vacant retail space in my newest building development, just 2 blocks from the Haddon Gallery. The night of the exhibition arrived with perfect timing. The divorce was nearly finalized, with just a few details left to resolve. I dressed meticulously in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo and arrived fashionably late to the Haddon Gallery, giving the event time to reach full swing. The space was transformed for the evening, with strategic lighting highlighting Vanessa's oversized photographs. The crowd was exactly as expected: Chicago's cultural elite, art collectors with deep pockets, critics with deeper opinions, all balancing flutes of champagne while making the appropriate noises about perspective and meaning. Rebecca stood near the center of the gallery, resplendent in a forest green Givenchy gown that hugged her curves before flaring dramatically at the knees. Her hair was styled in loose waves, and emerald earrings, a birthday gift from me 2 years ago, dangled from her ears. She was in full professional mode, introducing Vanessa to important attendees, her hand occasionally resting on the small of Vanessa's back in a gesture that now seemed glaringly intimate. Vanessa herself wore a sculptural silver lame dress, That caught the light as she moved, making her appear almost otherworldly. The dramatic outfit perfectly complemented her artistic persona. Bold, uncompromising, demanding attention. I watched them from across the room, neither rushing to make my presence known nor hiding from view. When Rebecca finally spotted me, the glass of champagne she was holding tilted dangerously before she regained her composure. She whispered something to Vanessa, whose head snapped in my direction, eyes widening in alarm. I smiled pleasantly and raised my own glass in a toast before making my way toward Elise Haddon. "Daniel," Elise greeted me warmly. "What a lovely surprise. I didn't think this was your scene without Rebecca." "I've developed a newfound appreciation for fine art," I replied smoothly. "Vanessa's work is quite revealing." Elise missed my double meaning entirely. Yes, this collection represents a significant evolution in her exploration of vulnerability and power dynamics. "Are there any pieces you're particularly drawn to?" "I'm still taking it all in," I demurred, though I must say I saw some extraordinary work by a young photographer named Maya Chen recently. Are you familiar with her? Before Elise could respond, Rebecca appeared at her side, her professional smile firmly in place despite the tension radiating from her body. "Daniel, I didn't know you were coming tonight." Her voice was controlled, but I could hear the undercurrent of panic. "Last-minute decision," I said lightly. "I wouldn't miss Vanessa's big night. After all, she's practically family now, isn't she?" Rebecca's smile faltered. "Could we speak privately for a moment?" I checked my watch. "Actually, I have another engagement shortly, but please don't let me interrupt. This is Vanessa's special evening, after all. You've worked so hard to make it happen." I emphasized the last sentence just enough that Elise gave us a curious look before being called away by another guest. Rebecca stepped closer, lowering her voice. "What are you doing, Daniel? If this is some kind of revenge—" "Revenge?" I feigned surprise. "I'm simply supporting the arts. Speaking of which, have you heard about the pop-up exhibition at the Atrium on Michigan? A brilliant young photographer, much more innovative than the commercial work being shown here. You should stop by if you have time." As if on cue, Caroline West appeared nearby, notepad in hand, clearly documenting the interactions between Rebecca and Vanessa. Several other critics were also present, some already drifting toward the exit, perhaps having received word of another, more intriguing event just blocks away. Rebecca's eyes darted between Caroline and me, realization dawning. "Daniel, please." "I should mingle," I interrupted smoothly. "Congratulations again on the exhibition. I'm sure it will be memorable if perhaps not quite in the way you intended." I moved away, pausing briefly to shake hands with several influential collectors I knew through business connections, casually mentioning the more authentic, undiscovered talent being showcased nearby. By the time I left the Haddon Gallery, at least a dozen key figures from the art world had decided to make Maya Chen's impromptu exhibition their next stop of the evening. Outside, a light snow had begun to fall, dusting the shoulders of my overcoat as I walked the short distance to the atrium. The space, originally designed to be a high-end retail location, had been transformed for the evening into a minimalist gallery. Maya's powerful photographs lined the walls, her exploration of urban isolation and connection creating a stark contrast to Vanessa's more calculated work. Already, the space was filling with attendees from the Haddon opening. There, excited murmurs suggesting they felt they'd discovered something authentic and unexpected. I spotted Caroline in deep conversation with Maya, her expression indicating she'd found an angle for her article that went far beyond a simple review of Vanessa's show. As the evening progressed, more people arrived, including several prominent collectors who had left Vanessa's exhibition early. I stayed in the background, watching as Maya's work received the attention it deserved, and quietly satisfied that my plan was unfolding perfectly. Around midnight, Rebecca stormed into the atrium, her green gown immediately setting her apart from the crowd. She scanned the room until she spotted me near the bar, then marched over, fury emanating from every pore. "You orchestrated this whole thing," she accused in a harsh whisper. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Half our guests left to come here. Caroline West is writing a piece on conflicts of interest in gallery curation instead of reviewing Vanessa's work. Even Marcus. Fletcher left, and he was considering purchasing 3 major pieces. Marcus Fletcher was one of Chicago's most significant art collectors, whose endorsement could make or break an artist's career. His absence from Vanessa's exhibition was indeed a devastating blow. "Sounds like the free market of ideas at work," I replied calmly. Maya's talent spoke for itself. I simply provided the space. Rebecca's composure cracked entirely. "This is about us, isn't it? You're punishing Vanessa to get back at me." "No, Rebecca, this isn't about punishment. It's about consequences." I set down my drink. "You chose Vanessa over our marriage. That was your right. But you also chose to use your professional position to advance her career at the expense of more deserving artists. That crosses a line, from personal betrayal into professional ethics. You've ruined everything," she hissed. I shook my head. "I simply created a level playing field. What happens next is up to the merit of the work itself." I gestured around the room where Maya was animatedly discussing her photography with an enthusiastic group that included 2 museum curators. "It appears the audience has made their choice." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears of frustration. "I never thought you could be this cruel." "And I never thought you could be so dishonest," I countered. "I guess we've both discovered new things about each other." She turned to leave, then paused. "Is this it then? Your grand revenge?" I smiled, feeling truly at peace for the first time since discovering her betrayal. "This isn't revenge, Rebecca. It's justice. There's a difference." As she walked away, her emerald gown catching the light for a final dramatic exit, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had not stooped to vindictiveness or petty retaliation. I had simply created an opportunity for truth, both personal and artistic, to emerge. The divorce was finalized the following week. Rebecca's professional reputation suffered a significant blow from Caroline's article, which delicately but definitively questioned the ethics of her curatorial decisions. Vanessa's exhibition received lukewarm reviews, with several critics noting that her work seemed to be retreading familiar ground rather than breaking new artistic territory. Meanwhile, Maya Chen became the unexpected discovery of the season. 3 months later, she had genuine gallery representation and was being featured in a group show at the Museum of Contemporary Photography. As for me, I sold the penthouse and bought a modernist house on the North Shore with expansive views of Lake Michigan. I dedicated one wing to a small gallery space where I occasionally hosted showings for emerging artists who might otherwise be overlooked by the established art world. It was at one such gathering that I met Claire, an architect from Vancouver who specialized in sustainable urban renewal projects. She wore a simple black dress to the exhibition, preferring to let her intelligence and quiet confidence speak for themselves. When she challenged my design approach during a group discussion, I found myself intrigued rather than offended. "Would you like to continue this debate over dinner?" I asked after the event wound down. She studied me thoughtfully before answering. "Only if you're prepared to be wrong." I laughed genuinely and freely. I'm finding I rather enjoy being proven wrong these days. It leads to unexpected discoveries. As we left together, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in the gallery windows. 2 people walking side by side, neither leading nor following, about to embark on something new. Not a replacement for what was lost, but something different, something honest. I had not set out for revenge after all, I realized. I had simply cleared away the wreckage of deception to make room for truth. And in doing so, I had found my way back to myself, and forward to possibilities I hadn't imagined when my perfect life fell apart. Epilogue. 1 year later, I stood at the edge of a cliff in Big Sur, watching the Pacific crash against the rocks below. Beside me, Claire adjusted the settings on her camera, trying to capture the particular quality of golden light that made the landscape appear almost surreal. "Perfect," she murmured, reviewing the image on her screen before looking up at me with a smile. This was worth the drive. We had flown to San Francisco for a sustainable architecture conference where Claire was a featured speaker, then rented a car for a leisurely coastal journey. There was something profoundly healing about the rugged beauty of the California coastline, the reminder that broken things could still be magnificent. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Ordinarily, I would have ignored it, but I was waiting for news about an important project. I checked the screen to find an email notification from Jason with the subject line, "Thought you should see this." I opened it to find a link to a small news item in the Chicago Arts section. Former gallery director Rebecca Collins relocates to Berlin, following curatorial controversy. The brief article mentioned that Rebecca had accepted a minor position at a small gallery in Germany, a significant step down from her previous prestigious role. Vanessa was not mentioned at all. Claire glanced over curiously. "Everything okay?" I put the phone away. "Just old news finally becoming history." She nodded, understanding without needing details. One of the things I most appreciated about Claire was her respect for boundaries. She never pushed for more information than I was ready to give. Over months of getting to know each other, I had shared the broad outlines of my divorce, but without dwelling on the painful specifics. Claire, too, had her own past, a broken engagement that had led her to focus exclusively on her career for several years. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, slipping her hand into mine as we gazed out at the horizon. "How differently things can turn out from what we expect," I replied honestly. "A year ago, I thought my life was over. Now, I'm here, in this incredible place with you." Claire squeezed my hand. "Sometimes we have to lose the life we plan to find the life that's waiting for us." It wasn't that I didn't occasionally think about Rebecca and Vanessa, about the betrayal that had shattered my world, but those thoughts no longer carried the sharp edge of pain they once had. They had become like old photographs, remnants of a past that had shaped me, but no longer defined me. That evening, as Claire and I had dinner at a small coastal restaurant, our conversation ranging from design philosophy to childhood memories, I realized something profound. What I had lost wasn't just a marriage, but an illusion. The perfect life I thought I had was built on deception. What I had found since then, this new beginning with its honest connections and authentic moments, was far more valuable than what had been taken from me. "To new discoveries," I proposed, raising my glass. Claire's eyes, deep brown and unguarded, met mine. "And to second chances." Our glasses clinked, crystal clear against the backdrop of waves crashing on the shore. Outside the window, the sun was setting in a blaze of orange and pink, illuminating the path forward. Not a straight line, but a winding coastal road with unexpected vistas around every bend. It was enough, more than enough.